Hey guys, we want to welcome you back to the Iron Edge podcast. We are very excited to have my good friend, Pastor Jordan Roberts, here to join us today. We're diving into deep things today. And so kind of buckle up and get ready for it to be real. All right. Well, we've come to you from South Carolina, from Oklahoma City. Now we come to you from the beautiful island of Hawaii. Is
that what it is?
Or a studio in Oklahoma City. You pick.
Or a hotel room in Phoenix.
Yeah, Pete's joining us from Arizona, Phoenix, Arizona. So, hey, this is cool. We can do this from all over. And hopefully we have guests from not just all over the U.S., but all over the world. Awesome. And this guy right here, our guest, he lives here in Oklahoma City, but he's originally from Hiawassee, Georgia. I said it right?
Yeah, you nailed it.
He's a mountain guy, Pete, just like us.
Man, you're close, man. You ever get back to Georgia?
Yeah, I'm actually headed there for the Thanksgiving holiday.
Yeah, if you ever want to come down to the beach, I guess you guys got the beach there too, but it's not quite the same as Charleston, right?
No.
Yeah, but it's real close. It's real close to the North Carolina border. So he's actually, not super far from you.
Yeah.
So good fishing trip or something.
And the Smokies there, huh?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. Beautiful.
So, but anyway, Jordan's a pastor here, one of the pastors here at the Gate Church in Oklahoma City. And he's a great friend. And I know his heart for God. And I know his heart to see what we're doing and for men to realize their purpose in Christ, walking with him. And so I'm super excited. I've been pretty jazzed to have him on here and just chat with him. He's just a regular guy, but he certainly loves God and he certainly pours out his life for people all the time. So that's one of the reasons I'm excited about this.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So did you want to say something?
No, I was going to say, once again, Jordan's also a member and has been a member of Iron Edge for a while. We haven't had to go outside of our pool of talent, whatever you want to call it, within the group. And it's still amazing, that there's so many people who are already serving and want to help others, find that direction. So I'm interested to hear what you've done and what you're doing and how that might be some kind of direction to some of our people here that are looking for opportunities to serve. Maybe give them a direction on how you got it. But I'd like to hear how your testimony, what pushed you into what you're doing right now.
Yeah, perfect lead in, Pete. I was going to ask Jordan to tell us a little bit about his story, how he got to where you are now.
Sure, yeah.
And I certainly don't want to pigeonhole you into Healing the Heart and LTS.
Sure.
But it is a great resource. And that's one of the things we're trying to do is resource guys to get plugged in, get the help they need, get the support they need, whatever it may be.
Sure.
So,
yeah,
dive in.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you, Pete and Chad. I'm honored to be a part. I believe in the mission and vision of Iron Edge. And so to actually kind of answer that question, these things go they go perfectly together in my world and in my story. And, we'll talk a little bit about Healing the Heart, LTS, things like that. But really, to understand why those things were so meaningful and impactful to me, it does help to know a little bit of my testimony. And, the most help I've ever had, some of the greatest advantages that I've had in life, the greatest influences of my life have been the men in my life. And so as is with the case with so many other guys, is that my dad is a very polarizing type figure in my life where, we can kind of look at our family history and the things that he did to change the trajectory of our family. There's some good and there's some bad in there. And so, being raised in a rural Appalachian town and community, I would say hyper conservative church movement that we were a part of. And, the Appalachian culture is different than Southern culture. And so I have to give people that a little bit, because, they hear Georgia and they think that, well, you're Southern. And that's not really the case. And so I was raised Appalachian, and we draw a strong heritage from the Scots Irish folks that came over way back. Some of those families were pre-declaration that they came over. And I say that to say this, is that the community that I was raised in, the city that I was raised in, was a clan culture. And so very tight-knit families. And if you crossed us or you crossed my cousin, then the families would feud. And so one of the things we were raised with in that mentality was we were hyper independent. And so weakness was shunned. And so I always kind of tell this funny story that when my wife and I were first married, she's not from the mountains. And so she wanted to drive this big fancy lawnmower that I had. And I said, you can't be on the lawnmower. And, she's from South Florida, and she's like, well, why not? I can drive the mower if I want to. I was like, oh, no, you can't be on the mower. Well, why not? And I said, because if a neighbor drives by and see that I've let my new wife cut our grass, I'll be shunned because I'm not handling my business. And that basically, like, I'm a weak guy that my wife is having to cut my grass. And so obviously that's some of my insecurity was poking up there, but that was ingrained deep in me from a young age. We don't ask for help, and that basically whether you rise or fall in this world is on your shoulders. And so in some ways, there are some advantages to that, learning to be strong, learning to be a self-starter, learning to be committed and diligent. But then there's also some things that are devastating that can come from that. And so that's kind of leading into what you're saying, kind of healing hearted in LTS. And so I've been a part of ministry. I've worked with ministries and things like that. I've done some other things with my life, but those are definitely the things I've spent the majority of my time doing. And so here's a couple of things that I've learned and I've experienced, is that when the scripture says that it's not good for man to be alone, God wasn't kidding. And that a lot of guys, our lives can start to crumble or fall apart, or at least be seriously deteriorated when we are left to ourselves, all by ourselves. And we use the things that are broken to try to fix the thing that's broken. That can be a frustrating recipe. It can leave us feeling, isolated, hopeless. And so I have had a couple of very serious meltdowns in my own life, all the while going to church, got great guys around me that could have helped me because of my own issues, and some of them cultural, but I just couldn't engage guys. I felt that I couldn't engage guys. I felt that I couldn't ask for help. And it really cost me a lot. It cost me some years, cost me some time. And it almost cost me my marriage and my children, my ministry. And so that's kind of dismal. I hope that's not too much of a downer for anybody, but, we're talking about, being real. And I think something I want guys to hear and understand kind of first and foremost is that, we need each other. And there's nothing wrong with sorry guys, there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with a guy needing help, seeking help, because I think something most guys need to understand is that first and foremost, as human beings, we were created with a need. And I'm referring to an emotional need. And so we need the love of God in our life. That is something we cannot produce it. We cannot manufacture it. And we need that in our life. And so through all the difficult things I went through, God put good men in my life that were willing to get involved when I was on the bottom. And so some of these tools that we're talking about, LTS, Healing the Heart, those things were really facilitators, their programs, their information, their tools. But really at the center of that thing, there were good men and women who were willing to get in and help me when I was on the bottom.
Yeah. Can you tell me, so for anybody who hasn't never heard of it, what's LTS? What's that stand for?
Sure. So LTS is it's really a church leadership and discipleship program that was birthed or created in a church in Pretoria, South Africa called Hatfield Christian Center. And so the church that I was a part of is friends with that church. And so some of our leaders wound up going there for that training program, and we've brought it back to the United States. And so that was pioneered by a man named Graham Cato. He's a phenomenal leader and really a leader in the nation of South Africa. And so it's about a month-long program that I went through there. We obviously don't do a month here in the United States, but one of the key focuses of that program to help you understand, okay, what does all that mean? Is one of the key focuses of that program is to help people connect with and understand God as a loving Father. And so something that they saw in Africa, and we see it here in the United States as well, is that a lot of people come to church, and a lot of people say the sinner's prayer, they have a Bible, but sometimes we really struggle in understanding and experiencing God as a Father, even though that is how he chooses to represent himself that way to us, is as a Father. And so, sometimes, people need a little help connecting those dots, understanding, because we interpret Father through obviously our own experiences. Some are less than ideal. And so that was a major thing for me. That program that does a phenomenal job of helping to illustrate what the God's Father heart to us as believers.
Can you give me some examples of that? Because I understand the program overall, but it's like what specifically how would they get you to that point where you understand that? Because I do get that. I'm not saying my dad's a great man. He's a member of Iron Edge, so I'm not going to smack talk him on that. I'm just kidding. I wouldn't do that anyway. He'd kick my butt. But a lot of men, we do see things through our own lens, and it is sometimes hard, especially if you haven't had a father. And I know a lot of guys who haven't, had a father figure in the house.
Yeah,
it's hard to figure out what does that mean. For me, a lot of times I was even trying to figure that out with my own family. It's like, how am I supposed to be as a father here? I think about God. It's like, well, but even then, I'm still looking through the lens of my experience at who God was, and it's really difficult to figure that out. So I'm curious about like some of the different things they would do to get you to be able to see that, to understand it.
So to answer that question specifically, Pete, is it's kind of like peeling the layers of the onion. There's a lot of things we work through, but we want to get to a central truth. And so really to understand God as a father, you have to understand the language of a father, and that is love, period. And now I'm a macho guy, run through the woods with knives and guns and long hair, and I'm scarred all over, but we need love. And so understanding the love of God as a father, and understanding that Jesus, the Son of God, plays a part in that, but he is not the Father. There is a distinction there. And the love that God has for us is sacrificial in nature. It gives and it doesn't demand in return. And it always has our best interest at heart. And so most people, because of our experiences, that is a process we kind of have to walk people through. But I have to say this, that there's a couple of stories that we tell. They're kind of folksy, but they help communicate the Father heart of God. And so the one that comes to mind, that's very brief and very simple, is that there's a young boy playing baseball in his yard. And he has a neighbor that lives next door, and we'll just say his name's Mr. Jim. And so the young boy's playing baseball every day, and Mr. Jim will walk by and say hello, encourage him to keep playing his game and do well, and just say, I'm so glad you're my friend and you're my neighbor. I love watching you play baseball, and really just trying to have a healthy relationship with the young man and encourage him. And then one day, little Jimmy, the young boy, he hits the ball through the window, and he's afraid and he's panic stricken. I've busted this old man's window. And so the old man runs out of the house, and he runs to the little boy and he says, I'm not worried about the window. Jimmy, I just want to be your friend. I will fix the window. I just want to be your friend. And so that seems simple almost, it seems you mean to tell me it's that easy. But I think that that's what Jesus was saying in Matthew 13 when he says, give us eyes to see and ears to hear. And so he's quoting Isaiah, and he says, you have to have childlike faith with eyes to see and ears to hear. And so there's something in us as men. I think we would all agree. There's some parts of us that never grow all the way up. And so sometimes we need to access not just the part of us that never grows up and we want big, loud, fast toys, but there's also a part of us that never grows up that says, I need a father in my life. I need God as a father in my life. And so that is that central thing, seeing him as a father and learning to engage him as sons. Absolutely crucial.
Pete, one of the things that I could share, because I went through LTS with Dr. Graham, and of course, Jordan was help facilitating. It is so impactful that you could ask anybody that's been through it here at the gate, and they will tell you a different point at which God got a hold of them. There was so much forgiveness that I didn't realize I needed to release.
Yeah.
That just completely changed my life. It transformed. I mean, that's what the whole thing is. It's about transformation. And the other thing that it was really impactful is there's a moment where, and Dr. Graham's he's a big dude, big South African dude, kind of rough guy.
Yeah.
But he has you come down to experience a father's hug.
Yeah.
And it's like a lot of people trip out about it. But I know for some people, they've never experienced a father's hug.
Sure.
And then for me, I had a great dad. Of course, he wasn't perfect. I'm not perfect either. Great dad, and so sure, I've experienced a hug, but when he hugged me, he grabbed me. I mean, just grabbed me and embraced me so firmly. And there is like this, I'm even getting emotional right now. There's a sense of security and like just total unconditional love.
Yep.
And that was the whole point, to represent how God embraces us.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's just one little thing that happens, and it's a moment that will, can
Very
powerfully affect people, not just men, but women too.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's one of the things that happens at LTS that is it's pretty mind blowing. So
I think that's hard to find. And we don't bash the church in here, but it is hard to find anywhere. There's not a lot of programs like that in churches. And that's one of the reasons why we've had so many people come on into Iron Edge, is they're desperate for that kind of guidance, for that kind of leadership and mentorship. Personally, I've done it myself. I've been a Christian for a long time. I've been a leader for a long time. So it's been really difficult sometimes for me to admit that I need that kind of mentorship. Hey, I got it under control, right? God definitely has done some things in my own life to show me that it's like, no, you definitely need this kind of a mentorship and leadership, and you definitely need to be relying on me in that way. I think a lot of people envision God as this huge, massive being that created universes, not just the universe, all space and time, and it's hard to imagine him as actually caring about you directly in that way,
right,
enough to be intimate in that way. And then, like you said, there's a lot of people who've never experienced that kind of stuff. I experienced that with my dad. I was lucky, we definitely had our times, and by the way, Shad, your dad just signed up today or yesterday, so be careful.
Yeah, I know. He listened to almost all the podcasts and everything this morning. He called me. He's like, "This is so good. I'm sorry I didn't sign up earlier."
But it's funny because Mike, Shad's dad, was like my second dad. So anytime it's like you were saying, you got to have those men in your lives. Mike was actually one of the catalysts that kept me on the path, because I was definitely headed for some. I remember, so one time, funny story, Shad will tell you this. I don't know how I got there, but Shad will tell you he pulls in from church. We were about 17, right? 16, 17 maybe. I don't know. We were young.
Yeah.
Pulls in from church, and my car is parked out in front of their house. And I'm blacked out, drunk. Whiskey bottle on the floorboards, just gone. I don't know how I got there. I don't know what it is, but I ended up at his dad's. I wasn't going to Shad's. I know that much. No offense, but brother.
It's okay. Not taken.
I was looking for Mike because Mike was that secondary father figure. I knew it could go to my dad. My dad would kill me, but somehow I ended up there, and it was like a subconscious thing, and it was a horrible thing. By the way, everybody, don't ever drive drunk. It's just stupid. It's just one of many stupid things I did before God got a hold of me and threw me in the military. But I was drawn to that. I needed that love, even in a state of, not understanding what I was doing. I needed that father's advice. I needed that father's direction, and I needed that father's love. And that's why I went there. So I definitely agree with you on that. And I think it's something that we all are craving, even if it's subconsciously, which I proved that point. It's just kind of weird. It's just in a horrible way. And
Do I get to tell the rest of the story?
I don't remember the rest I don't know if I remember the rest of the story. So
I'll make it real quick.
Have to.
We practiced me and Peter musicians. He's a great songwriter, guitar player, singer. We practiced this song for like weeks. Wednesday night service.
See, this is the part that sucks, man. You're just making me feel like crap now.
We were 17. It's all good. You don't get to tell any of my stories tonight, just maybe on a different podcast. And so they call our name, and there's no Pete. There's no Pete. I can't, whatever our band name was at the time. I don't remember.
I don't remember either.
We were in a lot. We were in a bunch of them. No Pete. So we're like, well, I guess we're not playing. I mean, he was like the main dude. And then we used to go to fellowship after, even on Wednesday nights. Yeah. And I get a call from my dad, and he's like, hey, just like that, you need to come home. Your buddy Pete passed out at the bottom of our driveway. So me and Pete's brother Barrick, we go and literally have to carry this big old 6'3" dude up the stairs, get him to bed, like the whole night. I was so mad. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? We're supposed to play tonight. But anyway, I'm glad you're alive.
Yeah,
we got to play the song later. I'm glad you're alive.
And by the way, I wasn't like an alkie. I wasn't a drug addict or anything. That was really like a low point, something that happened that triggered that. And it's obvious I couldn't hold my liquor at the time. And it was obvious I wasn't thinking or planning ahead at the time. But, it's just like, it was just one of those situations. But I do distinctly remember I needed something at that point. And it was a father's advice, mentorship, direction, and love. And, your dad, Chad, was one of those guys who gave
for sure
the direction.
So Jordan, sure. We talked about LTS. Yeah. You actually went to South Africa for a month.
Yeah.
Not only did you learn, or longer, correct me wherever I'm wrong.
No, yeah. I lived there for several months.
And then things progressed, if you will. Yeah. Life happened.
Yeah.
And, I know you've given your testimony here at the church as much as you want to or not, but now you're leading a program called Healing the Heart, which I certainly want people to know about. Yeah. And maybe you can tell us kind of like, I mean, there's a lot in there. So you tell us what you want to transition the two, or, however you want there.
Yeah. Well, I won't give all the details just for the sake of time.
Yeah.
But I do want to kind of give the high points because I think it's helpful for guys to hear. I know it would have been helpful for me because I know that part of me, when my life spiraled and it went to crash, a big narrative inside my own head was that I'm the only guy like this. I'm the only guy that's feeling this way, that's experiencing this stuff. So I want to touch on a few things just for the sake of any other guy who's listening. Maybe if you got a friend or something, but LTS was great, tools in the toolbox, and it helped me where I was at that time. But fast forward the tape a few years. Here's some things I've learned is that like having information is good and having experiences are good, but we make decisions deep within ourselves.
Yeah.
And no person and no experience can undo the decisions that we make. There's only one thing that God can't change in this world, and that's our free will. He cannot override my free will. So when I choose a thing, that's what I will have, and I'll have the fruit of it. And I say that to say this, that because of some of the things that I had believed about myself in my own life, I fell into a cycle of just to say what it is, a very deep depression. And I was a pastor at that time and doing some of the best work on paper that I'd ever done. But ministry is like any other job, and there are things about that job very rewarding, but a job doesn't fill a void in my life if I have a void. There are some things that only relationship with God and good, healthy relationships with other people can help fix. So no amount of work can satisfy the soul. It just has a little rabbit trail. Just when me and you, I get a little nerdy right here. But in essence, when the people of Israel were in slavery in Egypt, and I know I'm a preacher, so I'm not going to preach everybody a sermon, but just think about this for a moment. The essence of slavery is making bricks, trying to satisfy Pharaoh's ambition.
Yeah.
And they can't make enough bricks. And I know that there are guys out there that feel like no matter how hard I work, I've tried everything I know to do. I've tried every angle with my marriage. I've tried every angle with my children, every angle with my job, and I just can't get ahead. I can't get the thing I'm looking for. I can't get a breakthrough. There's nothing more demoralizing and honestly dehumanizing than to live in that kind of grind day in and day out. And I did that even as a pastor. And so I hit rock bottom. I started abusing alcohol. And here's why. It made me feel like I had a friend.
Yeah.
And, I'm ministering to hundreds of people on any given Sunday. If I was doing that, and some of the things that we were doing had global reach and felt all alone. And so that's a harsh reality when you kind of come to grips with that. I had a Harley Davidson at the time, loved motorcycles, loved anything with an engine that's fast and loud. And I would get on my Harley. I got a beautiful wife and two adorable children that are absolutely perfect. But I would come home from work and get on my Harley. And, splitting lanes is legal in California. It's not legal in Oklahoma. But, splitting lanes, in between cars and traffic, 90, 100 miles an hour, because I'm not having to face my problems. And for just a little while, I would forget how miserable I was. And so that's recklessness. And that's just really just coping down to sea. And, a few weeks go by or a few months go by, the depression really gets out of hand. And, I find myself ready to take my own life. And that's something I'm actually quite passionate about. Maybe a bit more about that in a second, but I was there. I'm a bit of a gun guy. I hope that's okay in this format to say that.
It's a good
No
platform.
way. I'm triggered. I am now triggered, and we now have to shut down the podcast.
No pun intended.
No pun intended.
But I'm by myself, and I'm taking slack out of the trigger of my pistol. And people can judge it and think what they will, and that's okay. I know where I was, and I know the state of mind I was in. And all I can tell you is this: that I was there, and I was about 1.5 pounds from falling over what felt like really the ledge, kind of staring into the abyss. And I was there. I was so there. And what can only be to me is the presence of the Lord. And to be clear for everyone, here's what that means to me. I got a moment of sanity, about that much sanity, and I had some peace that somehow I could make it. Somehow there was a glimmer of hope in the future, that there was a way for me to live. I felt trapped, isolated. I could not get out of whatever it was I was stuck in. I couldn't get out. And for a moment, I had enough peace, and I was able to put the thing down, and I was able to get up that day. Thank God. I don't take any credit for that. For me, that was a very unique event. I didn't have some kind of nostalgic, emotional thing that happened, I was there, and I believe truly that the Lord helped me to step back from the edge. And so that led me to Healing the Heart. My father-in-law, who was my pastor at the time, my employer, intervened in my life and offered to give me some help. And just for the record here, guys, I got to be really real. I'm with you, Pete. You know, I'm not trying to bash the church at all. I work for a church. I love the church. I've given my life to the church and will continue to do so. It's what I'm put on this planet to do. But when it comes to things like depression and suicide, that is somewhere as a church, we got to do a better job.
Yeah, totally agree on that one. That's, if you did, so just, I'm not minimizing your story at all. I just want you to know you're not by yourself.
Yeah.
In getting to that point. I went through Celebrate Recovery here in Phoenix. It wasn't for, but I figured out it wasn't for alcohol, it wasn't for drugs, it wasn't for smoking or porn or whatever. Mine was like more like a codependency, but honestly, it was just, what I figured out there was that we're all in recovery or we're in denial.
Yeah.
There's the underlying factors that usually cause you to go toward the alcohol or try and fill that void. Right. And I think most guys that I've talked to, maybe it's because I'm in the military, I don't know, I got a lot of friends who have been at that point. Yeah, I've been at that point. I honestly, and this is something you guys can pray for as well, but every single day since I was a teenager, I've had suicidal thoughts. Most of it, I think, is just demonic, and it's not something that I dwell on typically, but the devil will attack me with that. And I know I'm not alone in that. There's a lot of men out there. That's why we kill ourselves in larger numbers than women.
Yeah.
But it's because we don't feel like we can address those underlying things without feeling shame or whatever, or there's nobody's going to listen to us, and that, you're right. That's got to start with the church, and it's got to start with an outreach from the church, or you're going to continue to have the same issues. Remember going through Celebrate Recovery, it was funny. There was more women in our Celebrate Recovery. We had like 300 plus people, and they were all there for like codependency, mental, anger, that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah.
But there weren't as many men who probably suffered from more of that stuff. And it just, and I think it wasn't because wasn't there, because they didn't feel like they were going to be able to get anything out of it or be accepted or whatever it was. I think it does come down to a lot of shame.
Yeah.
And the shame culture and then the understanding of we're men. And yes, God has called men to be leaders in their houses and things like that. I'm sorry if I'm offending anybody. This is a men's group. There's a lot of pressure and a lot of weight on our shoulders because of that reason that is not typical for most women. A lot of single moms get that, I think. But for the majority, it's just not there. And then you try and reach out, you're weak and you're not taking care of your family like you're supposed to. It's the same thing you were talking about. So I want you to know you're not alone in that. I think that is a tactic the devil has used for so long, and it's worked for a long time. And I don't understand myself why there isn't more outreach within the church for that specific tactic. If I was doing a risk analysis, which is what I do for a living, that would be on the top of my threat list to address. So what do you think the solution is to that? I mean, we can talk about it all day long.
Sure,
what's the solution?
So I think a couple of things. I love what you pointed out is that in church, I think that our focus has been in the wrong place. We like to focus on fruit issues. So we want to go for the depression, the substance abuse, the codependency. Codependency is a coping mechanism, the same as substance abuse or whatever. And so we want to go for the fruit. But now here is the tricky part. We don't have the understanding, the people or the patience to go in to find, identify, and deal with the root issues of not just what is going wrong, but why are things going wrong. And so I would say for most guys, I agree with you, Pete, is guys are not going to reach out. They're not going to. I mean, statistically, they're not going to. Historically, they're not going to. And I'm going to tell you why, is because I kind of have this mantra that we live by, and me and Chad have talked about this, and we got to joke about it, is that just because no one says it doesn't mean I don't feel it. And so it's kind of a one-liner that points at our human intuition. But as a guy, I generally am going to know, is this guy sitting beside me, is he here to help me, or is he trying to fix me? Right. And so here's the problem in church, is that we let our ego become a part of it. And so what I can't do is look at Shad and go, oh, I'm going to help get him better so I can pat myself on the back and say, good job, Jordan, because we helped somebody today. You can't have that attitude. You just can't. When I go to help this guy, especially if he's in the fight of his life, it has to be a 100% about him. It's not about me putting a notch in my belt. It's not about me dropping some wisdom bomb on him that he's going to quote me on Twitter. It can't be about that. You know, I can't get the credit. You know, something my father-in-law used to say is it would be amazing what the church or the world would be capable of if we didn't care who got the credit. And so that kind of points to this mindset that I'm trying to identify. And so there are a lot of things wrong. We could fill books with the things that are wrong. I think we would probably all agree on that.
Yeah.
But I think what's amazing is that we are primed. We're very well placed to change those things. And I think it starts with me fixing myself. That's part of what qualifies me to want to help him. Is that kind of like you said, where your language was, we're all in recovery. And I may put a spin on that and say, we're all on a journey.
Yeah, that's better.
And, you know, I have to be willing to admit that in order to sit with him in his mud hole and go, man, I don't have an ounce of judgment for you. You know, I'm on the same journey, maybe different context, maybe different experiences, but I'm looking for the same thing you're looking for.
Yeah. So one of the things I want to say here, you know, we're talking about the church and we're talking about LTS and healing the heart, and resourcing our guys. So, as a matter of fact, at the Gate Church, because it has been so impactful in Jordan's life, and many other lives, Jordan and his wife, Holly, facilitate weekends of healing the heart here in Oklahoma City. And also you can go where he went it's Hidden Night, right?
The facility or the ministry is called Living Waters, but it's located in Hidden Night, North Carolina.
Yeah.
About an hour west of Charlotte.
And I believe in it so much. I've been through it myself. I've sent family members there to North Carolina. It was life-changing. It's and the thing is, it's not a magic wand, just like LTS is not a magic wand, right. But like Jordan alluded to earlier, it's tools in the tool belt. And just the other day, I was talking to, I'll just say, because I know he doesn't mind, my son Justice. He went out to North Carolina and it literally changed his life. And what he realized, I mean, he just turned 20. He's not perfect. But what he's realized, we were just out to dinner the other day and he's like, I had to sit down and do the work, just like I learned out in North Carolina. He said something came up that I didn't even know was like a deal in my life. And he goes, and I just had to sit down and start writing. He's like, once I wrote it all out, talked to God about it, I was good. So, and I have to do the same thing, but of course I'm proud of my son for doing that. But it's, again, not the magic wand, but it gives you tools and it's available. It's available to anybody watching, men, women, you know, families, whatever. So, you know, tap into that and we can put the links and all that kind of stuff. So,
sure.
Well, that'd be my next question. It's not something anybody has to answer now, but we have chapters in a pretty big chapter in California, of course, and you guys at the Gate are connected to Word of Life up there. They have a really nice facility up there, the lodge. I've used it for training because it's off the grid and it is California. That's kind of hard to do my kind of training out there, but there's a place out there. I know out in Phoenix, there's a lot of places. We have a big chapter out here. What would the chances be of being able to bring that kind of training out to some of these guys in these chapters? Is that any, like I say, you don't have to answer now, but it's just something to think about.
Yeah.
Is that a possibility or does it have to be?
It's definitely a possibility.
Yeah. Or we can do an OKC, you know, but yeah, I think that the sky's the limit really on what's possible. And the Lord's doing stuff with this group and guys in the
Yes,
group, like you said,
tremendous,
that are just, wanting to be a part. So
Yep.
I think there's options for people.
Yep.
And yeah, get in touch with me or Pete if you're like, I need that right now, and we'll get you connected to
Yep.
Jordan
Yep.
or whoever,
That's right.
and keep going.
No, I know where it's at too. You're only a few hours north of me, and I can't be that far.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll go check it out.
Yeah. We'd love to have you.
So one of the questions that I have for Jordan, since we're talking to our group of guys here and anybody else listening to, but one of the things, so he's been through the program, but he's also learned and gleaned and can teach it and facilitate it. And he talks about being a macho guy and all that stuff. The dude's a bookworm, and he reads and it's amazing. He's really brilliant like that. So not to puff him up, but I know, but
Thank you. It's very great.
but he certainly is a reader, and he just gets it. I'm a little jealous of it. That's all. Okay. It goes in there, but then he delivers it in such a way. So anyway, Jordan, you've now gone through this, and you've taught a bunch of people. And I'm curious, what are some of the things that you see specifically with men, like some similarities of guys that come into LTS, or more specifically, I guess now Healing the Heart? What are some of the things that you see that guys are dealing with? And then also what, maybe they're not quite ready to go into Healing the Heart, or maybe they've been through and they're on their journey.
Yep.
Maybe what is some of the preventative maintenance that we can instill, that we can walk away from this with?
Yeah. Okay. So it is the coming up on the end of my day, and I'm probably like you guys. I've been in meetings all day today. So I'm going to go with that first part.
Yep.
Then don't let me forget the second part.
Okay.
The
similarities.
Some things that we see in guys a lot, and kind of the things that we have to work through, process through. We're helping guys a lot. It depends on the age, but something you have to hold in your back pocket. You have to remember is that every person's journey, every person's path, and their experiences are different. And so there can be a lot of similarities, but how we process them and how we synthesize them within our own soul can be vastly different. And so we see a lot of, particularly in young men, a lot of situational depression. Or really anxiety, depression, all kinds of mental health issues that are connected to a couple of things: identity issues and really lack of purpose. And I was having this conversation with someone who was a more elderly man. We're talking kind of about Healing the Heart. And we're talking about how we're seeing so many young guys that they're struggling because no one's taught them how to be men. I have no other way to put it than that. And I don't mean just teach them to work a job, but I'm talking about what does it mean? What does it look like to be a man? And so what that produces when that's not happening is I don't know what to do with my life. I don't know how to be. I don't know how to connect with other men. I don't know how to kind of find my own path, find my own journey, figure out what am I passionate about in life, figure out what's maybe my purpose is in life. Those are things that are essential to being a man. And these things are missing. And so we deal with a lot of stuff that really stem from either absentee fathers, broken father relationships, or now here's a big one. A lot of guys that they had dads in their life, but they lived through difficult and traumatic experiences, and their dad didn't know what to do to help them. And so sometimes dad was in the home paying the bills, putting food on the table, but dad didn't know how to be a dad in that particular instance. And so some of the things that men, fathers have fallen back on have done more damage. Sometimes maybe we might say sins by omission rather than commission. Sometimes what dads didn't do has done so much more damage than what dads did do. So those are the kind of things that we work with a lot of guys with and about, even though each person is different. Those are kind of things we always look for and focus on. And
being real, as we're supposed to be here on the show, I've caught myself doing that with my son. My eldest son, Sean, great kid. He's only like 2 inches shorter than me. He's 13, and I'm worried about that. And he's working out too, so now I'm really worried about it. I'm looking at myself going, yeah, you're letting yourself go. You need to get back in shape. You're going to keep up with this kid. But he has a temper, and it is spiritual. There's no other explanation. Shad's familiar, it's just we can't figure it out. And I'll get to this point of anger myself and frustration. And I'll hear myself saying stupid things like, dude, you need to suck it up and get past this. You just need to, that kind of stuff. And I'm sitting here going, first off, you need to kick your own ass, because if you told yourself that as a leader, or told any of my men to do that, like that, without having like a really good reason to, I'd be mad at myself for doing that. So it's like, I don't understand why I would do that with my son. And I think a lot of times when you can't fix it, you see it happening and there's nothing you can do about it, no matter what you do, except for, have faith in God and trust him and understand that one thing you were talking about, free will, right? The one thing you can't change. And I love my son, but he still has to make those decisions. When you can't fix it and you're feeling that hurt and pain, you're watching your son suffer, your daughter suffer. I think sometimes we just go and revert back to being stupid. With the things you say. I do it, and I've done it a lot, and I've seen how it's affected him. The times when I've seen it really works is when he gets something out of it, is when I screw up and I sit down and we talk about it. And I say, dude, I screwed up and I did this. A lot of my friends know I struggle with smoking cigarettes. I've struggled with for a long time, and God's still working on me with it. But, my son he finally was old enough. He found a pack of smokes in my car. And I'm sitting there, it's like, I could lie about this, and he probably believed me just because he loves me. He wants to believe that I'm doing the best. But instead, we sat down and we talked about it. And I said, I am struggling with this. I need you to pray for me. I need your support. So every day, if I go out to the car, he's checking, Dad, where are you going? What you doing? You need to do something, you need to pray or whatever. It's been the best thing in the world for me to have my son, encouraging me. And I don't think he ever would have done that if I hadn't gone and just been open and honest with him. Of course, you want to be honest about everything, right? But trust me, these kids know more about life because of the freaking YouTube than we ever did at that age. So but it was kind of cool seeing that, instead of just getting frustrated with them. And when you bring them into your life a little bit, you show them, I'm not perfect, and this is what I need to overcome, and I need your help on it. For some reason, that just made a huge difference with him, And I wish I was perfect, guys. I wish I could do that, and I could just portray father of the year, to my kid. But anybody who says that they are, I'm sorry. We go back to that recovery or denial thing.
Yeah.
It's just like everybody has those hardships that you're overcoming and struggling with, and the boys, the way they learn is by seeing you overcome that, and being involved. Right. So anyway, I digress, and now I just aired out a bunch of dirty laundry on our show.
It's okay. This is a wide open podcast today.
Yeah, but that kind of answers where I was going with that part too. And you actually said it, so I'm just going to agree with you and echo what you're saying there, Pete, is that a couple of things. I heard this quote one time. I'm pretty sure it's some kind of like a shooting instructor that I heard say this, but he said it, and I thought that's brilliant. He said, people never rise to the occasion. They fall to the level of their training.
Yeah.
And so we do what we've seen practice or what we have practiced. So let's apply that to parenting or just life in general. We don't really do what we've been taught to do, we read to do. We really, when things become stressful and intense, we're going to fall back to what we have seen modeled. And we will replicate modeled behavior 9 times out of 10. It's a rare dude that can read a book and then go live out that book if he has lived for 25 years in an opposite experience.
Yeah.
And some other gunfighter guy said this, and I thought this was brilliant. That basically we as human beings, the way we're wired is we learn exponentially faster when we do something together than if I go watch it on YouTube or read a book. And so he was talking about jujitsu. And he said, you can watch YouTube and eventually go practice with your dummy, and eventually you may become a black belt in jujitsu. He said, but you're going to get there so much faster if you're hitting the mat with a black belt every day. He's going to get you there. And so that kind of leads me to that preventative measures question that you're asking. And you said it, Pete. I would say this to guys across the board, but guys and gals for that fact, but guys across the board. Honesty.
Yeah.
Honesty. Honesty is a fruit of humility. And if I had to pick one word that in theory should describe all believers across the board, I would say humility. And so, but humility requires something from us. It requires vulnerability. And I kind of sum it up like this, that vulnerability is a decision that I make to fully rely on God's strength. And so a case study that we have is King David, who he was anointed and promised a crown, but you don't have it on record any time of him going around telling people that. So he didn't go around and saying, I'm a king, treat me like one. He showed up every day and he fought the battles that a king would fight, protecting the innocent, killing the giants, living in enemy territory for years, and Ziklag surrounded on all sides by his enemies. So he lived the life of a king. And so what was he doing? He put whether or not I will ever become king fully in God's hands. He said, I'm going to live like I am in the meantime. And so we model that behavior. We have to put the trust in God's hands. And so what that means for us is I have to be humble and honest about who I really am, what is really going on in my life. What are the things I'm doing when nobody's looking? I mean, we've kind of heard that character integrity kind of framed like that. And I would say this to a lot of guys, what's going on in your head that you don't tell nobody?
Yeah.
Yeah, that stuff going on behind closed doors. That always got me. It's like I remember I used to go jogging with General Petraeus. I'm not bashing General Petraeus, but this is an example. There's a thing in the military. You cheat on your spouse, it's illegal. You can get charged with it and thrown in jail. Everybody's like, that's kind of extreme, and they still haven't changed it. No, it's not, man. Because if you're doing stuff behind closed doors like that, and it comes to light, and your men hear about it, and you're willing to toss your wife under the bus, how fast are they going to toss you? That person? How fast are they going to toss you under the bus? And it's that same thing. You can act a certain way behind closed doors, but eventually, reality is reality, and it comes. And it was exactly what you were saying. We all go to our baseline, whatever that baseline is. If we've never actually established that baseline, that survival mode where we're at, then we're going to curl up in a little ball like a coward, and that's what we're going to be when reality hits. But if we're being honest and true with ourselves and others, and like getting the whole idea, we keep talking about this on Iron Edge sparring, right? That's what sharpens each other, and it's opening up yourself enough to take that blow so that you're strong enough when the real battle comes, because a lot of us have never experienced that real battle yet. And if you're not being honest with yourself about who you are, you've built this persona, this idea of who you are. Like you were talking about men not having an identity. When that real battle comes, you're just going to crumble, and you might end up in that situation where you're desperate and desolate, don't know who you are, and you pull the trigger. And so I think it's really important to be honest about who you are with other people and not be afraid of that. There's too much of that going around nowadays. It's frustrating to see. And I think that's another reason why so many men have jumped on here is they're craving authentic conversation with real people, not personas. Everybody's going after these self-help books and people and characters and stuff. And the minute they screw up and it's public, right? Because they projected themselves as this perfect being for so long. Their whole entire following's gone. Their ministry's done. Whatever they're teaching, it's gone. Nobody has any faith in it anymore. And we don't want to be that here. I don't think we are. I think we're pretty. Yeah. I don't know. This could be the last podcast that we do. Who knows? But at the same time, I don't answer to anybody else. I don't want to. I don't never want to answer. I want to be tactful. I want to have respect for people. But I'm going to stand before God. You aren't going to be there. You guys might be in the background somewhere. But the only one standing there in front of him answering for anything I did is going to be me. That's right. And maybe everybody else is hearing about all the crap I did. That kind of sucks. But I'm the only one going to answer for it. And I want to answer for it with my head held high. That's it. That's bottom line. So
yeah. Well, once again, we've got, way down the road on our 30-minute podcast. We still got to hit that 30 minutes though, man. One of these days when it's just like me and you, we'll hit 30 minutes. But Jordan's already shared some incredible stuff with us. But I also too just want to give you just one last opportunity to, maybe share something with the guys that, something that you would want to leave them with, a takeaway from today whether they're struggling or whether they're on the path or on the journey. So yeah, just open that up to you as we close this out.
Sure. Well, I think probably I would want to say in the context in which we've spoken tonight. You know, we talk about the human soul. That thing it's deep, it's wide. We could talk for days, but no matter where you're at, it is not weakness to seek out help.
Yeah, amen.
It's really not. And so, you know, I kind of heard, I don't know where this comes from, but I heard once about in business, if you're not growing, you're dying. And, you know, stagnation is death. And so really it's just death not fully realized. And so I would encourage this to a lot of guys, don't become stagnant in your journey. Take stock. And here's something you have to trust is that if I want to be not just the best, but if I want to be the healthiest man that I can be, that means well-rounded, versatile, stable, dependable. That's what a healthy guy looks like. So if you want to be that kind of guy, no matter what you're doing, if you're in the military and you're at top tier, you know, like stacking bodies or whatever your thing is, you want to be dependable. Or if you're just like a guy trying to sort your job out, you know, trying to raise a kid, you want to be dependable, consistent. And so when you're on that journey, trying to find that, you don't hesitate to look for help. Don't hesitate to seek out help. Be honest about that. I don't know what the next move is. And here's something you have to trust if you're a believer is that when you take responsibility for your own life, that God will help you find and get the help that you need. It doesn't matter where you're at, who you are, what you're doing. We can't cut God out of the equation. He wants to be an intimate, involved part. He wants to be the partner, as the Bible says, a co-laborer with us. So he wants to be with you wherever you're at, doing whatever you're doing. So if it's buying groceries, reading a book, whatever the thing is, he wants to do that with you. So be open and honest and let the help come however it will.
Thanks again, everyone, for joining us. I hope you got something out of this. I know I personally did. I've had a lot of the same struggles, and it's no secret, you know, that a lot of us have a hard time with just our mental health and getting to that point where we don't feel like anybody can help us, and there's nobody who's going to listen, or we're too ashamed to admit certain things to other people. I just want to encourage you now that that's what we're here for. That's what we're doing. Iron sharpens iron. And the only way that happens is if we're honest with each other, if we are vulnerable enough to let somebody beat up on us a little bit and point us in the right direction so that when the real attack comes, we're ready for it. And so thanks again for joining us. Make sure you check out. I think there's really something going on with those two programs. And I think there's probably some people here who can benefit from them. So please check those out. And if you need to, directly message Jordan and talk to him about it. But thanks again for joining us. And we'll see you next time.